also charts online you can Google to tell you what all the common file systems are. I highly recommend you be familiar with that. Not necessarily just for the test, but in real life also. Anytime you install an OS, you need to know what file systems you're putting on there. That's a critical thing. You still have to do that today. That's not automatically done for you. Dual boot systems combined with 98 and Windows NT are not recommended because the partitions problems are going to cause you some headaches. Dual booting Windows 98 and 95 is not possible. So dual booting Windows 98 and 95 is not possible because those OSs do not work, neither one of them will support dual booting. The Windows 2000 coupled with either one can. You install the 98 first, then you can install 2000 because 2000 says, oh, there's a 98 partition here. Do you want us to dual boot together? And you can say yes. Or you could do 98 and 95, but only with partition magic. So that's not on the test, not on the test, just in real life. You could do 98 and 95, but it just doesn't come native with the OS. That's what they're talking about here. Okay, so for the test, we cannot do 98 and 95. Only 98 and 2000, 95 and 2000. 2000 supports dual booting. So if operating system X supports dual booting and you're going to install it in parallel with 98, can you do that? Yes, because operating system X will be installed last and it will provide the dual booting functionality, right? You can put 98 on first. Okay, I think we beat that up enough. So Windows 98 cannot access files on the NT file system partitions, and Windows NT cannot access files on the FAT32 drives. So we have drivers that can do this, like network system file drivers. So you will be able to see those files, but not natively. You need some translation. And this is a direct result of the different partitions. The file systems are completely different. If you study them at all, you will see there's tons of extra bits for security, there's tons of extra bits for this and that, the different file names, they have to know, it's like me trying to read Chinese. I have no idea what's going on over there, right? Actually, I know a little bit of Chinese, but basically I can't read and write and speak it fluently. So if I'm looking at Chinese, I'm not going to understand everything I'm looking at. And that's what happens with this. If NT looks at a 98 FAT16 partition, it goes, I don't know how to read that. And then 98 can't look at an NTFS partition and say, I can't understand that, right? I don't know what that is. So that's why this makes sense as well. Windows 98 cannot access files on NT file systems or NTFS partitions, and Windows NT cannot access FAT32 and so on and so forth. They're not compatible. Now, they started fixing that later because this represented a lot of problems for their users. So they made the newer versions understand the older versions. So the newer ones were backwards compatible. So for example, if you go get Windows today, it can read a Windows 98 file partition. It can read that FAT16, FAT32, all of those. And even OS X can do that kind of stuff now. So any of your StarNext systems, they should be able to read it today. But they can read it, but they can't write to it without a special driver. Like Paragon NTFS makes special drivers for OS X. Now OS X just came out with a new, the HFS X. Those can read the NTFS partitions, but they can't write to them without the Paragon. They're read-only. So confirm hardware requirements and compatibility. Ensure that the system components meet or exceed requirements. This is true. So if you want RAM that's going to operate at such and such a speed, you have to get, a minimally has to meet this standard, then you have to buy RAM that's that or faster, right? It'll downgrade the speed. So choose hardware from the hardware compatibility list for Windows 2000. This used to be a big deal. Today, it's not that big of a deal. People probably don't even check this at all. Choose hardware that is certified to work with 98 and ME. Well, what does that mean? So hardware, you know how you sign a driver? We see this today in Microsoft. They try to sign all of their drivers. There's problems with that. We use drivers that are unsigned all the time. So it's not required, but it's just recommended. And that's what they're talking about here. Update firmware or components. Check the basic input-output system and update it if necessary before installation. We talked about this, right? If you're installing a big hard drive and you have a 2 terabyte hard drive and the BIOS can only handle a hard drive up to 500 gigabytes. You're going to need to reflash the BIOS. Chances are they've already got an update out there for you. It's probably been out there for you. And then you just go flash it and you're good to go. It'll recognize a 2 terabyte drive. So you're not buying anything new. The BIOS upgrades are free. You're going to get that from the manufacturer, the motherboard manufacturer. BIOS updates can reduce problems and increase performance. Yes, they can, but they can also introduce problems too. So anytime you make a change, you want to make one little small change at a time so you can tell what broke something if something's not working. So don't go change 50 things at one time. Choose between an upgrade and a clean install. We talked about this. A clean install is done on a new or a newly formatted hard disk. Well, not necessarily. I can take a disk that's been used before and format it while I'm doing the install. An upgrade adds new components and updates existing ones. True. The /check upgrade only option performs a dry run install and reports any possible conflicts. So it'll kind of go and see if you're going to have any issues. Again, not a big deal today. Record information and backup data and key files. So you want to back up all of your stuff because at any time that thing could just nuke the drive and you're done. You could lose everything on it. So you create a written record of system configuration and network settings. So your IP addresses, gateways, all that kind of stuff, your DNS settings. You back up all your Win servers, all that kind of stuff. And then you back up all configuration files and custom registry entries. So you might have some custom registry entries for something. And then when performing an upgrade from 95, use Device Manager or Windows NT. Most people just stuck the disk in there and it would do it. And then back up all data files, batch files, and user profiles. So yes, very important stuff.